Didn't see you there. Hello, my name is Jay Carter. I am here for you today. I, your host, would like to introduce to you a new fun thing. This is what I call Where's Where of Athanasia, where you and I will explore a new place. A whole new... I don't want to get sued. I will be sharing this with you right now in the live stream, and also down below in the description of the video. So right now we have 3 files. I'll see what I can do about trying to get them maybe put into the same file, I guess, if that's even possible. Let's see what I can do here. So get shareable link. There's 3 parts to these towns. The first tells you the stats about the town itself and gives you the names of the shops and information about the proprietors. The second file gives you information about what those proprietors have on hand and how much that might cost. So you can use that on the DM side to talk about what things are available and how much they cost for your players. And then the third one is just some information about just other details, basically, about the nitty-gritty stuff that a person might want to know. We'll get into it. So this town and they're differentiated by population size. I've gone all the way down as far as like a trail stop kind of thing, just a little shop on the path, all the way up to a metropolis. In Athanasia, there's really only 1 or 2 metropolises. Usoria is the human kingdom that's considered a metropolis, and then the Tower of Towers, which is the megocracy run by the 3 notable wizards that are known as the Wizards Tribunal, is also metropolis. There aren't too many others, so we're probably not going to get too much into the metropolis unless we're talking about someplace that's on like the other side of the world or something like that. I might do some just for the sake of it, of fun. But so what we're going to be talking about today is a town. So this is a couple of steps up from just a pit stop on the road, and it's in a terrain area. Let's see, it's in the Savanna. So this is a subcategory of grassland. What I have tried to do is make these terrains compatible with the Ranger's favorite terrain feature. And so when possible, I'm able to sort of identify those terrains in case it ever comes up. I have gotten a little bit more specific. So this is the Savanna, which qualifies as a grassland for the purpose of abilities. Our town's name is Church. You might be wondering, why would a town be called Church? Well, I don't know. There's a town called Apple in Alaska. Towns are called weird things. But yeah, so this town is called Church. Maybe there's a reason why, maybe there's not. We'll find out. Church is in the Savanna, as previously stated. Its weather is sweltering and overcast. The clouds sit low toward the ground and, like an oven, just let the humid air sit there and churn. Inside the city, it is modern and divine. The alignment of the people who live there in general, and also the government itself, is lawful good. Common animals nearby are giant hyenas. So if there are any animal attacks, or maybe if there are any pets, like if people have a pet, maybe it might be a giant hyena or a steed at that point, because how big is a giant hyena? We don't know. The common races, the common local races, are Tabaxi, which in Athanasia in the Grimoire campaign setting are called Leonians. And among Leonians, there are a number of different cat breeds. So we have Tabaxi, lizard folk. Those would be in Athanasia would be called Draconians. They are related to Dragonborn. They're like cousins, but they don't have breath weapons, obviously. And they usually have like vestigial wings. Minotaurs, which in Athanasia would probably just be cowfolk or bullfolk, depending on how you want to. Maybe Bovians, Taurians. Either of those would be fine. I haven't gotten there just yet. They also have antfolk, which you could easily replace with any insect type creature. For example, we recently talked about Bellin, the mantid alteration mage. So mantids, maybe, could be a common occurrence here. And then donkey folk. And for various reasons, I have given an assortment of possible animal hybrids just by using the name of the animal and then -folk for ease of use. Like, as you could see, by saying the word Minotaur, you knew exactly what I was talking about. But then what they're called locally could change. Leonians are fairly common. Draconians are fairly common. They're one of the major races of Athanasia. Minotaurs, less common. But then antfolk, donkey folk, those are going to be like your sub races that aren't really, terribly that aren't really found everywhere. They're slightly uncommon. Although we've now seen 2 antfolk categories in the last couple of in the last 4 videos or so. So maybe the antfolk are more prevalent than we expected. The town has a population of 2,050. And then we have a set of common features that I say prominent features. We always have a prominent piece of architecture, some building or other, a prominent physical feature to the town or its environs. We have a prominent monument, and then a prominent attraction. So the architecture, as previously stated, is going to be a building. In this case, it's a town crier. We'll have more information about what the town crier is like later. Prominent feature, a geoglyph. So there must be a large area of ground that has been molded by manpower or woman power and turned into a large piece of aerial artwork. The monument is a pedestal. So think like a column that rises up and has a flat top upon which something might be placed. We'll find out more about that later. And then the attraction is a library. So this is interesting. Okay, so we have it's lawful good. There's a library, there's a pedestal, a geoglyph, a town crier, geoglyph, and a town crier. Now let's talk about the businesses. On down we have, and if you're following along, you'll see that everything I just said was in that first box up top with the big black sort of banner. The next big black bannered box down, we have along the left-hand side, business, proprietor, and then about the proprietor themselves, we have the age, race, gender, physical appearance, what they're wearing, their personality, the voice they might use. These are a couple of notes just for the sake of making it easier for like a DM to interpret what they're going to sound like. And then I have in parentheses the words I want and I fear. One thing I learned from acting classes and improv is that it makes it very clear who your character is when you can identify what it is they want more than anything else and what they fear more than anything else. If you can tap into what they want and fear, they're going to feel very real, and it's going to be very easy to determine what their motivations might be. So we'll talk about these guys very briefly, and maybe we'll come back and talk about them later. So the Inn and Chambers is known as the Bash Inn. And I have gotten a little bit cheeky with the puns on these sometimes. They are random, so they'll come up or not, as the case may be. So the Bash Inn is run by an old male lizard folk named Vargach, which means battle. He has a grimy look, wearing rustic clothing, a little nervous. He has a front voice, and for the purposes of creating a kind of shorthand about how these people sound, I have described it as like front, back, mid, high, low, mid. So you might end up with a front. In this case, would be he speaks very forward. Like in your mouth, you're not going to be speaking back here. You're going to be speaking forward in your mouth, where you might go normally. And it might help, for example, to think of it as like sticking your neck out just a little bit, that you're trying to move your voice as forward as possible. And then the descriptor on his voice is unreliable. So interpret that however you will. Use your creative imagination, what does unreliable sound like? Nervous plus unreliable sounds extremely uncertain. So for example, I might talk like this. Hi, I'd love to help you if I knew how. Right? Something like that. And he's an old male lizard folk, so maybe he's just learned over time to not mess with people. He wants to keep his aunt's secret. Who is his aunt? Why does she have a secret? What is that secret? That's up to the DM to decide. He fears losing control. Why is he nervous? Maybe he's afraid he'll lose control. Interesting. Things like that, right? So we'll move on. The general store is called Church Outlet. Pretty simple, straightforward. It's run by a young tabaxi female named Bird, but she goes by Timber. And then she's got all tabaxi from the Dungeons and Dragons official sort of supplements are, they always have these additional sort of clan names. They're not last names per se. It's just like she's Bird, and then she's known as Timber, but from the Rumbling Tree clan or tribe or pack or whatever. She has a grimy look, utilitarian dress, a wary personality, front and confident. She wants to find her purpose in life, and she fears being unfulfilled. You all can reference all of these in the PDF in the description. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to go ahead and just, now that you kind of get the idea of what all is included, I'm going to go ahead and continue just by describing the proprietor in sort of short form. So the gem cutter, there's a gem cutter there called the Miffed Gem Cutter. This is an adult male lizard folk named Soriv, whose name means eye. The Boyer, people who make bows, the Boyer is called the Bullseye, and it's run by a male lizard folk child named Garurt, or Axe. Now, some of you may recognize this name from my recent video on Who's Who about a hedge wizard who was out in the forest near, to eastward of, what's the name of the town? It was Saltmarsh. That's right. Ghosts of Saltmarsh. And so is this the same person? Male lizard folk child? Probably not. Maybe just a common name in the area. Or maybe from a completely different area, because there are plenty of people who are named like Michael. So sure, there could be another lizard folk named Garurt and not be the same person. The costumer is called the Sweltering Traveler. It's an adult female tabaxi named Mating on the Tree, from the Rumbling Tree clan. There's a locksmith called the Sweltering Schematics, run by an old tabaxi male named Seven Thundercloud, from the Snoring Cliffs clan. Okay, different clan. We have a chart maker known as the Fourth Ring, run by a female tabaxi, a mature female tabaxi named Right-Handed Mount from the Snoring Mountain clan. A locksmith called the Fifth Locksmith, run by an ancient, and this is just to indicate like very old, near death, tabaxi female called Shoe Hand from the Distant Rain. We have Eput Key's Barrels, a potter, run by Eput Key, a male donkey folk, an ancient male donkey folk. And then we have a sign maker called It's a Sign, run by a mature ant folk woman named May, M-E-I. So all of those shops then have goods and services to offer. The Inn and Chambers could get you a branded flask for 2 copper, a wand of pyrotechnics for 74 gold, Heward's handy spice pouch for 77 gold, and so on. The general store called Church Outlet could get you a basic poison for 100 gold, a bullseye lantern for 10 gold, or a climber's kit for 25. There are plenty more, but I'll let you sort of peruse and see what else is available. There is a gem cutter who offers a ring of swimming for 241 gold, pearl of power for 384, a circlet of blasting for 326. And you'll notice that in some cases, these prices are pretty rounded off, right? Like 100 gold for a basic poison, a bullseye lantern for 10 gold. Well, some of the gold pieces, some of the prices are much more to the gold piece, for example, the branded flask for 2 copper, or the ring of swimming for 241 gold. That's because I've programmed into my spreadsheet the ability to come up with a specific price randomized between within a certain range. And that's because in the DMG, they actually not discourage, but they give you the ability to say that something is anywhere between, say, a common item might be anywhere between 50 and 100 gold. An uncommon item might be anywhere between 100 and 500 gold. And because of that range, I've taken the liberty to just say, yeah, the market is pretty variable in some places. And so you might find a ring of swimming for 105 gold or 499 gold. It depends. And so in this particular location, they're 241 gold. And it looks like they only have one. Pearl of Power, Circlet of Blasting, Ring of Water Walking. Why does a gem cutter sell all these magic items? Well, probably because they've made a deal with a local enchanter or maybe a distant enchanter, and they are offering their services to the enchanter, and maybe they get a cut of what the enchanter sells, and the enchanter, vice versa, says, okay, well, I will enchant your jewelry and I'll send it back to you and I'll get a cut of what you sell. So that was sort of the idea. I wanted to make it possible for there to be places that could sell magic items that made more sense than just, here's a magic item shop. Because in Athanasia, it's not super common that you find a lot of magic items being like, what do I want? I'll just choose from this entire list. You must have one of these. I wanted it to make a little bit more sense. So any magic item that was a piece of jewelry, I included potentially to show up in a gem cutter. The same thing was true for like a costumer. If there was a magical cloak, they might have something like that. A locksmith might have a magical something, whatever would make sense. A chart maker might have scrolls, might have magical scrolls. And that's just because there are plenty of enchanters around and they tend to enchant things, but you're not going to find just anything you want anywhere. You'll have to look around a little bit for it. It's sort of a luck of the draw. Literally, in this case, it is a luck of the draw. So they have a Ring of Swimming, Pearl of Power, Circle of Blasting at this gem cutter. The Boyar has blowgun needles, an unbreakable arrow, one unbreakable arrow for 88 gold, a chest for 5 gold. The Sweltering Traveler, the costumer, has a backpack, a bedroll, an emblem, holy symbol, and other such things. The Locksmith, the Sweltering Schematics, sells a bullseye lantern, branded shovel, tinderbox. I've included this sort of like branded feature on the things that people might sell. I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting than just, I buy a clay mug. Why would anybody just want to buy a clay mug and feel like it was a fun thing in a role-playing game? I mean, I guess you could go like full immersion and say, I got to drink something. But let's say you really liked the shopkeeper at this one. Like, let's say the PCs go into this shop. They have a really memorable experience and they just want to have something. They want to know that their character has something to remember that shopkeeper. It sounds kind of cool in my mind to say that you went to the Bash Inn and you got a branded flask. And so there's a flask, and you can maybe take a little bit of a moment to just think of, what would the Bash Inn, what kind of a logo would they have? What kind of brand would they put on a flask? And, maybe it's a picture of a fist going through a door or something like that. And that's your logo, and so they get a branded flask for 2 copper, which is nothing to adventurers, and you have something fun and memorable and interesting to give your players more than just you get a clay mug. So this branded shovel from the locksmith, like, why would the locksmith, the Sweltering Schematics, why would they have a branded shovel? That just seems so weird. It's so kind of kooky. It's fun. You can also get like a tinderbox, or you can get a pound of silver if you wanted to to construct something, right? If you were crafting something and you needed silver, you could go to the locksmith and get a pound of silver. The chart maker sells branded ink pens, treasure maps, grappling hooks. Now, the treasure maps are interesting because they actually, like, I can't remember where I got this idea. I think it might be from somewhere, maybe Xanathar's. But the idea of a treasure map is like it shows you the location. It's essentially like the simplest possible adventure hook. It's like, here, I have somebody who passed along to me this treasure map. I'm a chart maker. I made this for them, but for some reason, either they didn't want it or they were okay if I sold it, or maybe they're, again, like the enchanter with the gem cutter, maybe they're in league with the people who hid the treasure. Maybe they just said, hey, and it's maybe like a game. I don't know if you guys have ever done like geocaching, right? Like you go out, you hide something, you put the instructions online, and somebody goes out and they find the thing, and they maybe take a picture with it and put it back or whatever. So maybe this treasure map thing is like that. Maybe it's like a fantasy geocaching, where you buy a copy of the map, you go and you find the treasure, you either leave something or take something or whatever. Maybe it's a little activity, a scavenger hunt or something like that. And they go off on a little adventure, and it's fun. So, of course, grappling hooks, sealing wax, other things like that, things that you would find. This chart maker also happens to have a world map. Here's an excuse to get, like, literally just hand your players a map of the world. Usually people, it's a little difficult to explain in game how people come across a world map, why they would know where they are. How do their characters actually get around? How do they know where they're going? Having a chart maker or a cartographer in a town that sells world maps, now they have a reason to know. That's kind of fun. There's another locksmith that sells a pound of copper, a branded lock. That really makes a little bit more sense. Locksmith schematics. So maybe somebody's trying to craft a lock, and they can just take this schematic, and that will count as the material component, not material component per se, but like maybe that reduces the amount of time it takes a person to craft a lock by whatever. Maybe by following the instructions, you're able to take a day instead of a week or however long. The potter, Eput Keys Barrels. They sell barrels, reliquary holy symbols, branded lamps, reliquary holy symbols. So these are interesting, right? The concept is it's a potter. And the sort of question is, well, why are they selling barrels? Well, anything that can be made of clay could potentially be on this list, right? So let's say that you have a barrel, but that barrel is really just something like a pot in the shape of a barrel, with a lid and stuff like that. So it's a clay barrel. A reliquary holy symbol. You can imagine anything that can be made of clay, right? So you have, maybe there's a clay tube, and inside it has a cork on either end, let's say, and that inside is like the finger bone of one of their ancestors, and that's very important to them. And on the outside is inscribed, the holy symbol of their family, the religious iconography that reminds them of their patron saint, let's say. So yeah, a branded lamp. This would be like a clay lamp, the kind with a little wick that sticks out that you fill up with oil inside, and maybe there's a little lid for it or something. Anything, yeah. And then like walloping ammunition. You have 52 gold for one piece of walloping ammunition. It's a common magic item, I think, from Xanathar's. And you would just have a little clay ball that's been enchanted with the walloping property. The sign maker, It's a Sign, also sells reliquary holy symbols. And you'll notice that there's this trend, right? They're lawful good. It's a lawful good town. A lot of this stuff is like holy symbols and things. So far, the prominent architecture was a town crier. The feature was a geoglyph. The monument was a pedestal, and the attraction was a library. None of these are really associated with religion directly. But the town itself is called church. And so that makes me think, okay, well, maybe there is a church, but it's not the most prominent thing. Maybe there's a church in the sense of like a congregation of people, but not a physical location that's been built. Maybe they're raising money to build the church. Maybe there was a church and they're trying to build it back up again. You never know. So this kind of makes things more interesting. All right, moving over to the third page, if you'll follow along, I have a professionals list. And this is sort of my attempt at saying what kinds of people live here that have skills that are not necessarily something that you could sell. Or that is to say, not a physical object, right? What if you wanted to just have somebody around who's good at persuasion, who's good at history checks? Is there anybody who could help me find something? Is there a detective? That kind of thing. Can anyone solve mysteries? Can anyone come with me as a lie detector to just say, hey, that guy is totally lying through his teeth. Aha! Bring him with me. A diplomat, somebody to help you with negotiations, whatever. So these church professionals, again, church being the name of the town, you have a noble, a hermit, a sailor, an acolyte, and a sage. These would be the backgrounds for the people in question. This particular noble in church is a baronet who works at a manor, and you could employ their services at the cost of 45 gold pieces per day, again, divided up per hour if you really needed to. And they have that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth column in just has the plus sign over it. This is the bonus they get to whatever skill checks you would want them to use. So this baronet who works at her manor could be employed for 45 gold pieces a day to make a history check at a +9 or a persuasion check at a +9. She also happens to know how to use playing cards. So maybe you want to use her services in, say, swindling somebody out of their money, right? Oh, come and meet the baronet. We're having a card game. We're putting on a charity event, right? And of course, the person in question can't say no. They might look uncouth in high society. And so, of course, they say, yes, I would love to. And then, of course, you're just paying the woman to be a card shark, which, who knows, depending on her disposition, it's a lawful good town, but maybe she herself isn't lawful good, and this is all under the table. We don't know. There's a hermit who has a focus of exile, and he works in seclusion, of course, for 36 gold pieces a day, which is a high price for an exile, but hey, you can get a +6 bonus on a medicine check or religion check, and he's proficient in herbalism kits. There you go. There is a sailor who is a second mate working on a ship. Now, the question is, if this is in a savannah, is it possible that there is a ship nearby? Sure. Well, depending on your campaign setting, in mine, there are things like floating boats. The non-magical versions are sort of like, if you took a rowboat and attached it to an enormous balloon. So they're a little bit like dirigibles, if you want to think of it that way. And I call them dirigiboats. And it's a bit of a silly name, but it gets the idea across, and I think it's sort of fun. So maybe this is the second mate of a dirigiboat, a very large dirigiboat, let's say. There's also exactly one flying boat that is recurring in my game, and that's a ship known as the Trawler, and it's run by a captain named Captain Redcoat. So maybe this is the second mate of the Trawler who happens to be in town, and they're flying their boat from one location to another. Now, there's no reason you can't just say that the Savannah is near the ocean or an extremely big lake, like one of the lakes in the United States, bordering between the United States and Canada, the Great Lakes. So who knows? What kind of ship is it? Could be any kind of ship. +7 in athletics or perception or navigator's tools. And then there's an acolyte who focuses on being a messenger. So this acolyte, again, suggests the presence of a church, of some kind of religious organization. There's a messenger who works in a faction house. Oh, here we go. So we have some more information. So there's a faction house in town. And this acolyte probably doesn't have to be a religious acolyte. It could just be one of several members of a faction, whatever that faction may be, whether it's political or business or what have you. For 25 gold pieces a day, they would get a +5 to insight or history. And then the astronomer, there's a sage. There's an astronomer who works at the library. Okay. And for 25 gold pieces a day, they'll give you a +5 on an arcana or history check. Excellent. So that's how the professionals work. Then, of course, we have on the bookshelf, and you'll be able to see all the details here, but I want to kind of talk about how this works. So books in my campaign setting, in the Grimoire campaign setting, they offer a total bonus, a maximum bonus. And the way that players are able to access this bonus is by reading the book for an hour. They essentially drain the book of one bonus point. And they then bank that bonus point for a given check. Now, if they don't have, obviously this isn't an issue with 5th edition, but with like Pathfinder, for example, you weren't able to make knowledge checks unless you had a rank in them. In 5th edition, thankfully, you don't worry about that. You just worry about whether or not you're proficient in it. So while you have this book, you make your check for the appropriate topic at whatever bonus you happen to have. Now, it's more than just like knowledge checks, like history or nature or arcana. I have expanded it to also include basically manuals, how-to books, things that would help you, like car repair for dummies, let's say. I don't know if that book exists, but I'm pretending that it does. So car repair for dummies, that would be like a mechanics check at a bonus. Or you could call it, whatever you wanted, dexterity check of some kind. So we have the Chronicle, which gives a history bonus with a max bonus of +9. You can bank as many hours of reading as you would like. Doing research, quote unquote, in my campaign setting is essentially reading any relevant book on the subject and banking that number of bonus. So a person could read this history book for 9 hours total and use up to that number on a given check. If you pair one book on a given topic with another book on the same topic, you essentially lower the maximum bonus of that second book by 1. So if I had 2 history books, which it looks like I don't. So let's try another example. Nope, doesn't look like these are good. They're not reproduced. So everything on this list is unique. But if for some reason you were able to find 2 books of the same with the same skill, that would be that offer you a bonus, you're essentially just calling, let's say that both of them are a +5. The first one that you read is a +5 max, and then the second one would only give you up to a +4. And then the third one on the same skill would be up to a +3. And the reason I do it that way is because, honestly, there's only so much knowledge to be gained. And depending on, there's going to be some overlap. Like in the Venn diagram of what each book covers, probably there's some repeated information. Right? So there's only so much to learn about history before another book is just going to tell you the exact same thing, something you already know. It also prevents really rich players from just going around and buying the world's stock of history books and then amassing it for one big research check and then just saying, I know everything, These are also fairly rare. The +9s are fairly rare. And they're also more expensive. These are 79 gold pieces for this book, this chronicle known as Ancient Lore, the Pedestal. And you can see that it's pulled information from the prominent features of the town, right? There's a pedestal in town, and this book called Ancient Lore, the Pedestal obviously has ancient lore about the pedestal in this town. So it will relate directly to where the PCs are at that moment. Then you've got a puzzle book that gives you a +6 max bonus on perception called Catch Easy to Miss Details for 55 gold pieces. A physiology book that gives you a +7 max bonus to medicine called How to Stabilize a Dying Giant Vulture. Right? Hopefully these all make sense within the campaign setting. It's likely that they came from that given area. So like a giant vulture would be the kind of thing a person could find in the savannah, which is where this town is located. But it's also possible these books came from other adventurers who came through town and said, hey, I've just come from the metropolis over there, and I've got this big stack of books I don't need anymore. Translation, they've read them and used them on all their checks. And they basically just hand them off, sell them over, and this library inside of this small savannah town now has books that are relevant to the metropolis over there, and who knows whether anybody's going to be by to buy something from them, and so on. You can refer to the on the bookshelf list in the description below. All right, so then we have our little teeny boxes that give more information about each of these locations. So we've got architecture, feature, monument, and attraction. Our architecture is the town crier. And this is just a little bit more information. Again, the idea behind most of the GM advice that I have read, I say GM, of course, I come from Pathfinder where they called it Game Master. A lot of the DM advice that I've heard about world building is that you want to start small and build your way up. As needed, expand the world. And this is sort of where that comes from, right? If you go into town and you mention as the PCs are entering town, yeah, there's a town crier's booth. There is a geoglyph. As you come in, you notice that there's large bumps and ridges in the ground. You notice as you come into the main square that there's this large marble pedestal and you can say whatever it is you want to be on top of it. And then, of course, you see the library off to the side, a lot of people coming in and out, etc. Mentioning all these deep details gives your town a sense of realism, a sense of depth, a sense that there's more going on than the PCs know about or that the PCs could possibly ever interact with. But you don't want to make the veil too thin and have nothing behind it to back it up. So the second they go and investigate the town crier, because you mentioned it and they want to go investigate, you'll have to come up with something. And this is what that's for. So the conditions of the town crier's, I'm going to say booth, is roomy and haunting. So maybe what's haunting about it? Maybe it's old and dilapidated and it's the wood of the walls is starting to rot and some of the planks are falling off and you hear the wind whistling through the broken windows and it's a little weird, but it's quite roomy. If you were to go inside, you could see that there's one single chair and a toppled table and the rest of the area is completely empty, except of course for the spider webs. Now, this is kind of where we get to the second level here. That was the first level was the conditions. The second one is the colors. The colors are white and alabaster. And this is just something where it's giving you clues about what might be inside or what it might be made of or other kind of things. It could refer to anything. Let's say white refers to the spiderwebs. Maybe that's what inspires you. It's haunting, and white is one of the prominent colors. Okay, so there's lots of spiderwebs, right? And then alabaster. Okay, maybe the town crier is someone whose skin is as white as alabaster, or maybe there's an alabaster pitcher on the floor next to the chair, or something. Right? Anything you can think of, anything that gives you to inspire you it's just there for flavor, right? You don't feel tied down to it. It doesn't mean anything unless you give it meaning. And then finally, there's a trinket. And these trinkets are pulled from the trinket list. So this would include the trinkets found in, I think Xanathar's has a list of trinkets, which is pretty extensive and very interesting in my opinion. So this trinket found in the town crier of Church is a mysterious scabbard. What is it that makes it mysterious? Is there a sword in it? Or is it just a scabbard? Maybe the town crier had a sword and had to leave suddenly and maybe drew their sword, left the scabbard behind and charged out the door because they were doing something like maybe answering a call of the militia to go defend the outskirts of the town. Who knows? Maybe the giant hyenas were attacking, pulling that animal element from earlier, right? And the scabbard is just there. Okay, so they find the mysterious scabbard. Who knows? The geoglyph is vacant and clean with the colors blue and cerulean. Now, of course, cerulean is a kind of blue, but I like including options to have a more evocative color. If, for example, if you didn't know what alabaster was, you would at least know what white was. And if you didn't know what cerulean was, you would at least know what blue was. Now, curiously, the geoglyph, the pedestal, and the library all share the same colors. They're all both blue and cerulean. I don't think that the randomization formulas are meant to give you colors that are very close together naturally, but in this case, it just so happens that white and alabaster are very close to each other, blue and cerulean are very close to each other. And so I find it very interesting, again, because randomization, that they happen to show up this way. The trinket at the geoglyph is a face stone. What could that possibly be? Who knows? The descriptions that are in like Xanathar's and stuff, or the player's handbook for trinkets, they don't give them names, right? They just describe it, right? A stone that feels that vibrates when you approach Fae. right? And so I've given those just shorthand names because it's easier to put into a randomization list and, plunk into a little chart. So a face stone, what could that be? It could be anything you want it to be. Pedestal, simple and small. Okay, so we know that the pedal is small and it's simple. Maybe it's just a straight up like a cylinder of marble, or maybe pulling from the town crier, maybe it's a cylinder of alabaster, and it's the same kind of alabaster as that pitcher in the town crier's booth. Who knows? Again, the color is blue and cerulean. Maybe there are blue ribbons that have been tied to some object. And what is the object on the pedestal? Well, the trinket says wooden whistle. So there's a wooden whistle on the top of this pedestal with blue ribbons tied onto the wooden whistle. Why is that wooden whistle there? Why are there ribbons tied to it? What is the meaning of this? And it's up to you to decide. The library conditions are unsettling, but also inviting. So maybe the outside is inviting and the inside is unsettling. Maybe the outside is unsettling and the inside is inviting. The colors there are blue and cerulean as well. So we could easily just associate perhaps the colors of the ribbon. Maybe there are banners of the exact same color, and you're able to sort of clue in your players to this fact by saying, oh yes, this blue ribbon, you look over and you see that there are banners of the exact same color hanging from the library. The library's facade is open and inviting, and you see people coming and going. And then if they investigate the library, they get inside and you say yes. And it appears that the inside of the library has everyone who's inside is required to put one of these ribbons around their foreheads and wear it 100% of the time while they're inside. And everyone's sort of walking around like this is normal. And I mean, I think I would find that a little unsettling, right? Like, what is that about? So there you have some inspiration for pulling from. Trinket, obsidian shard. And the concept is this could be found anywhere. It could be prominent or hidden somewhere. Maybe one of the characters who goes looking for a book on the shelf, pulls a book down, opens it up, and inside it's been hollowed out. And inside of that book is an obsidian shard. What in the world is that doing there? What could that possibly be for? Who knows? Maybe it's a prominently displayed item. Maybe there's a little glass case as you walk into the library, and there's a little stand with this obsidian shard sitting in it, and there's a little donation box in front that just says, donate for the library. Why are you donating for the library? What does the obsidian shard mean? Who knows? You're welcome to interpret it however you please. So then we have a menu, and this is possibly the thing that I enjoy. My players love the menu because the craziest things come out of it. Now, I've gone as dramatic and extreme as I can in some cases because it is far more interesting to give the players something memorable and weird. I have my players constantly asking me whether or not they sell lion cheese. And that's just because they've never heard of that before. And it's really interesting to hear that somebody would go out of their way to milk a lion and make that into cheese. So you can always make this more bland or normal, but I find it very difficult to make things more extravagant or exotic or weird. So I try to go as extravagant, exotic, or weird as I can, and then pull it back if I feel like it doesn't make sense. So examples of things that are on the menu: stuffed oyster mushrooms, giant hyena steak and kidney pudding. And again, here we're using that local animal to sort of inform other things. If there are a lot of giant hyenas, why wouldn't they use them for the local cuisine? Somebody who's competent enough a hunter could go out and kill one of those giant hyenas and make it a steak. Steak and kidney pudding. Pull the kidneys out too and throw that into the mix. Barley roll and pig cheese, minced carrot medley, raspberry egg tart. And all of these are sort of in categories for your convenience, right? An appetizer, an entree, a bread and cheese combo, fruit and veggie combo, and then dessert. So minced carrot medley is the vegetable option. If it were to randomly generate another option, it might come up as a different vegetable or as a fruit, right? So you have your option there. Raspberry egg tart. And where possible, it does sort of choose a signature vegetable, a signature fruit, a signature meat, a signature grain, and these are sort of worked into the common drinks and food and things like that. So that would be what's on the menu, and it's implied, of course, that you're coming for like dinner or something like that, something you would eat before you go to bed, because I find that to be the most common thing that players are going to do. There are, of course, drinks. They have a house stout, a pumpkin ale, a house rose water, cider, mead, red wine, and coffee. And because I have set aside what I would refer to as like a signature grain, I have done a little bit of research. I don't drink alcohol myself, but where possible, I have looked up what kinds of alcohol can be made from what kinds of grains. And so, for example, the fact that there are barley rolls means that it's more likely, not guaranteed, but it's more likely that they're going to be making their alcohol from barley. And so that's kind of informed what sorts of things will show up on the drink list. Lunch, deviled pigeon eggs, barley crackers, again, using that same barley, cream cheese, raspberry yogurt, and pine nuts. So here we have from the dinner menu, we have a raspberry egg tart. And then for lunch, we have a raspberry yogurt, again, using the signature fruit. Breakfast would be giant hyena sausage, again, using the signature meat, bagel with raspberry butter, and then sweets for breakfast would be raspberry yogurt and pine nuts again. They'll have that offered at both breakfast and lunch, apparently. And then, of course, they have trail rations, anything that would qualify as like a dried meat or a nut or dried fruit. So you have a protein, a bread, and a sweet. In this case, trail rations consist of roasted pine nuts, barley biscuits, and dried raspberries. And all of those have prices, and I've tried to scale up or down considering the size of the community. So whether if it's like a trading post on the side of the road, everything's going to be super dirt cheap, right? Because they got to attract travelers as they're passing by, and they're not going to be super high quality, but that's okay because it's just something to get you by. Whereas if you're in a metropolis, you might have, a drink, especially if it's a spirit or wine, which are more expensive in general than say like an ale or something. That cost, if you look at this one, the spirits, the house rosewater and the cider are 12 gold pieces per, mug. So, or glass, or however you want to interpret that. So 12 gold pieces, that's kind of expensive. That would be something that you've like imported specifically, which is probably why it's so expensive. Something you've made locally, obviously here it says house rosewater. That'll be not because you've imported it, but because the person in question has spent a lot of time and care. Who is it that makes that? Well, probably the person who runs the inn. So that old male lizard folk, Vargok, has probably made this house rosewater and is very proud of it and has put so much time and effort into it that it's 12 gold pieces a serving. So that's it, folks. Thank you for joining me for a description of church and letting me walk you through this. What do you think? How could we make this into a more, I guess, not palatable per se, but like how can we make this a more useful tool for you in your dungeon mastering efforts? Could I tell you a story about church? Could I introduce these sections individually? Could I describe what people see and experience as they go into the prominent features? Should I try to attach specific, like the who's who NPCs to one of these locations, or is it more fun to just have them be separate and not necessarily interact, with the option, of course, of having them interact? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm also planning on doing another video sometime soon where we talk about things called What's What. So we'll be talking about maybe like piles of loot or something that you find inside of a cupboard or whatever you might want to put in front of your players to make things feel a little bit more diverse and fun and interesting. So join me next time for another episode of Where's Where at some point in the future. And also check out my upcoming videos on What's What, things that you can introduce to your players in your campaign. Thanks so much, and we'll see you later.